think so.
Up says now it is
Okay.
streaming. Yeah, it looks like we're live.
Okay. Perfect. Oh my God, we were struggling with that. Hi, everyone. I'm Anna, and I'm from Mars. And I'm, of course, the host of Mars Talks. And today with me is Stefan Avram, who is the co-founder and CMO of Wondergraph. And he's here to talk to us about the challenges and, of course, the fun part of marketing and growing a dev tool. So, Stefan, could you please introduce yourself and tell us what you're working on?
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. So my name is Stefan. I'm a co-founder and the head of growth at Wondergraph. Wondergraph is the open source serverless API developer platform for helping build, compose, integrate APIs. And what we're working on right now is we went from open source to now building out our cloud offering and to nurturing the community and building out the traction for the cloud offering. What we want to build is, if you're not familiar with it, is the Vercel for backend. Quickly compile the integrations, APIs, everything that you need. And with one-click deployment in under 30 seconds, your backend is deployed. And then you hook it up to a client. And our dream is in a weekend, you can build out the SaaS application that you like. So build your SaaS in a weekend. And so that's what we're working on right now at Wondergraph.
Oh, perfect. And I mean, that all sounds amazing, but I'm not a technical person, and I know that you are a developer, right? Or not, maybe not now. You went to another role, but still, we'll get to it. So could you dumb it down for me? So basically, APIs and integrations all sound amazing, but what if I'm I want to use you, but I'm not a technical founder. Could you dumb it down for me, basically?
Yeah, great question. So I'll actually start with the story of how Wondergraph became about first, because it might help. So our founder and CEO, Jens, he was working at the largest German news company at the time. And with news, there's a lot of different sources of information coming from all over the place.
Yep, I hear
Sorry, it like cut out for a sec. But so Jens was working at the largest German news company, and a lot of different data sources from all over the place. And what he kept realizing was that he was spending a lot of development time and power on integrating these data sources into their application. So that way they can put it to their customers so they can see the news. And each of these integrations, so a different news channel from a football place or soccer or cricket or, breaking news, each of them required custom code. And so now you're adding, 10,000 lines of code each time for just integrating a small source. And they're all different because each developer has to do it themselves, and they write it. They have to add different types of features like authentication, caching. So nothing is uniform. So what Wondergraph does, it allows you to create a uniform layer of all the same code and the same principles and the same standards for integrating APIs. So now it doesn't matter how many APIs or data sources you're integrating, they're all uniform and they're the same. And so this allows you, in business terms, to go to market much faster. So now your developers, they don't have to worry about writing the boring stuff and integrating the APIs. They just quickly integrate it. The boring stuff is done. And now they work on the things that they really love, which is building out features and adding new things into the client, designing the backend to be optimized. Wondergraph eliminates that tricky situation of having to write custom code, adding your own authentication, and then instead it's just built upon the standards. And so does that kind of explain it a little bit better?
Right, much better. No, thank you. And I mean, we're at Mars, we're doing something like that as well, like trying to get rid of the routine tasks that developers have to do. So I think there could be a great friendship between us. We should definitely discuss it.
Yeah, of course. I would love to give you guys a product demo if you ever need.
Awesome. Yes, absolutely. And likewise. So yeah, like I mentioned before, you're actually a software engineer, right? So you have IT background. So what made you move from coding to taking on the CMO's responsibilities?
So good question. I went into computer science because I like to program and I like building things. But overall, the biggest thing for me was I love technology and I love working with people. And so this role is like a head of growth, which is like sales, marketing, and product. And so it's kind of in the unisense of all the things that I like in technology, and it's the perfect place for me to be. And so I used to be an engineer, but I will be realistic with you. There are people that are a million times better than me. And I wasn't a bad engineer, I was a good engineer. No matter how hard I worked, I realized that these people were just wired differently. And so I realized though my skills come from talking to people, talking about the product, networking, building connections, building communities. And so the jump was a little bit easy for me because I was able to utilize the things that I'm naturally good at. And I let the people that do the coding that are naturally good at coding do the coding. And so the role for me, it was very easy to jump into it, but I still do a little bit of programming because I enjoy it. So on the weekends when I have time, I build stuff with Wondergraph, and I'm always making little small changes in the open source repository, as well as any website changes. So my role is mostly 80% like marketing and growth, and then 20% is probably coding. So I'm still doing it on the side, which I do love. So it's like the perfect place to be for me.
Awesome. All right. I love how you explained it. And I know that there is an interesting story how you guys found each other, how you actually created a team, and what it's been like 2 months since you all first saw each other or something like this.
Actually, so it's longer. I'll tell the story. So
Sure.
Jens, I was on Y Combinator Find a Co-Founder. And it's basically like Tinder, but for finding a co-founder. And so I saw it on my email and I tried it out. I created a profile. And the first guy I met was a strange guy based out of Miami. And it was a very weird experience. So I was like, okay, maybe this site isn't for me. And then the second one was Jens. He's like, hey, like I'm an open source developer. I'm a architect at this company. I built these products before, and I'm currently working on Wondergraph. I'm looking up to team up with someone to do the sales and marketing. And I was like, okay, cool, let me check it out. And so I checked out the product, and he had extensive API integration knowledge. He had experience being an architect at top companies based out of Germany, as well as a consultant's role. And I looked at the product, and what I did is I sent it to 10 of my developer friends, and I was like, what do you guys think about this? Let's check it out. And so they all thought it was really cool. And so I was like, okay, let's do this. This has some potential. We just need to, show people what it can actually do. And so I built out a small demo project with it, and I really liked it. And so from there, me and him partnered up. And for a while, it was just me and him. And then we brought on our third co-founder, Dustin, who we call the machine, because Dustin is an open source god. Like he is so good at programming and he is so good at designing architecture, and he's just the beast. And so we brought him on and he helped us scale out the product a little bit more. And then when we got to the point where we were looking to raise funding, we needed somebody, which I say, to handle the boring stuff, but the boring stuff is so important, which is, the legal, setting up like the PTO, everything that makes a company a company. And so we brought on Bjorn, who at the time was the CEO of another company. And so there was us four, and we raised, and which is crazy because we never met each other ever, like in person. And so we have an ongoing joke is like when we first met each other, it's interesting because you're like, okay, I saw you on Zoom. I can't see below your
Yeah.
legs. So it's like, oh, nice, you have legs. And it's like, oh, you're a lot taller than I thought, or you're a lot shorter than I thought. And so about 8 months after I first met Jens, we met each other all together in Frankfurt, and we had our founder meeting. And that's where we finalized the plan for what we want to do for the next 6 months with the money that we raised.
Okay, and well, that's amazing. First of all, I want to ask you, like, how did you build a relationship in this remote team? Basically, people who never saw each other, never knew if, you love the same pizza, or I don't know, you put pineapple on yours.
No, I
And
don't.
and second is, how did you raise again before you met each other? That's an even crazier story.
Yeah, so the first one was like, how do we get along with each other? So it's very different because Jens, Dustin, and Bjorn are from Germany, and I'm originally from Serbia, but I live in Miami, and I grew up in America, so I guess I'm American. And very different cultural things, but what I liked most about working with them is they're very honest. So if something's wrong, they tell you. There is no sugarcoating or whatever. And so for a culture fit, we're all both hardworking, or all of us are hardworking, and we both, when we see something wrong, we present the problem and then a solution that comes with it. And so culturally, to be business partners together, it just made sense because we worked very well together. And in the first month, you can tell if you can work with somebody. I think a famous entrepreneur, Naval, he said, like, if you can't work with someone for a day, you should never work with them at all, because right away. And so in the first day, I was like, okay, I can work with this guy. This is awesome. And then we brought on Bjorn and Dustin, and we're all different in completely different ways. And we're all different personally, as well as like our family situations. But somehow we just all click when it comes to Wondergraph, because my strengths are here, but Bjorn's strengths are here, and my weaknesses, Bjorn can cover those, Dustin can cover these, I can cover his. And so in the setting, it's very nice. And the most important thing, like when you're building a team, especially remotely, is trust. And that was the first thing that we established with each other, that like, we're building a startup. It's like kind of like going to war, and we're going to war together. And so like, I'm going to spend more time with you than I do with my girlfriend. Like I'm going to be on calls with you all the time. Like if somebody saw how much time I was on Zoom, they'd be like, okay, that's not, it's not healthy. And so the
Something's
first
going
thing we
on.
did, yeah. So the first thing that we did was establish the trust. And so that was probably the most important thing when you're setting up a company, and your co-founders, is you have to trust them, because you're going to spend more time with them than you do with your wife or your girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever. And then what was the second question again?
How did you manage to raise any money without seeing each other? Obviously, like that was, I guess, COVID or a little bit post
Yeah.
COVID time. So I guess all was online, but still.
Yeah. So COVID, like, it, in a sense, helped out with that. So more people were online, and so now people were raising money from online. And so what we did is, first we built out the community, which we can get into later, and then from there we were able to acquire our first customer. And so we had that traction. So I told you, like, we had this amount of weekly downloads, we had this amount of people joining the Discord, we had this amount of people tweeting about us. So we had the traction, and where we wanted to go, we knew we needed to raise money. And so what we did is we compiled a list of like 100 VCs that we would love to work with. And the first thing when it comes to raising money is, there's two things actually. The number one is, if you can do this with somebody who's already done it before, you will bypass like 50 steps, because they already have the connections of the VCs. So if you can get with someone that's raised money before and they can be your co-founder, that's very important. But second, if not, you have to do it like everybody else, is you have to just cold call, and you have to go out and you have to do it. And so the first time you're raising money is a lot of grunt work. So you have to go out, you have to send emails, you have to get on VC calls. And we were getting on VC calls, and we had a pitch deck, and each meeting honed our pitch deck to be a little bit better, because VCs would ask questions that we didn't even think about. Like, oh, okay, we can put down the pitch deck. And so each of those was just like practice, 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 practice. Then we got to the final match with our VC that we connected with. We liked them. And which is funny enough, they were like one of the first ones that we pitched to with our awful pitch. So the last time we pitched them was much better. And they were like, all right, let's do this. And so I think we pitched to like maybe like 50, 60 before we actually got like a bid on one. And we were like, okay, let's do this.
Oh, wow. That's cool. That's actually super fast.
I don't know. It was like 4 or 5. It was more like 4 or 5 months, and it's like scary because we were all doing this as a part-time gig. So
Yeah.
we had like Wondergraph and our daytime jobs, and it's a lot of context switching to be going through.
Awesome. Still, I mean, congrats. And how many hours did you spend, preparing for that, perfecting your pitch deck and pitching, I don't know, to each other, to your friends?
So Bjorn, our COO, he's the one that came up with the pitch deck, and he would do different versions and he would pitch it to us. But each meeting we added something new or we removed something, because they would say, we didn't like that. What is this? And so there's not really a big number we can put on it, but we could probably say like 2-3 months to finally hone in our pitch deck. And our pitch deck's at a point now where it's good, but it's going to have to completely change when we approach Series A and B and
Right.
C, and that all depends on the metrics and things like that. But I'd say about 2-3 months it took us to really hone down on it and get a good pitch deck.
Okay, I will ask you if you were able to share it, because I'm trying to compile, pitch decks that are relevant, because whenever people want to give an example of an awesome pitch deck, they give like Airbnb a buffer, or like whatever happened like 20 years ago. So I'm trying to compile a set of pitch decks that are actually relevant and up to date and raised money. So if you're willing to share that, I'll be super happy.
Yeah, I think I can share it. I'll just check with our legal team if it's fine.
Okay.
But if so, I'll just pass it over. But a lot of them are very like the same. You have like the intro, your team,
Yeah.
the problem, the solution, and then like why you're so much better. But I'll share with you, and then you can let us know your thoughts.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so let's move on to, you raised money, but before that you already had some traction. So how did that happen? Like obviously you had I don't know, a network, a community of the developers you probably worked with, right? To show the product to, right? To get some opinions. But how did you convince them to use it, because even if you give somebody something to people and it's free, sometimes it's difficult to just like make them use it.
Yeah, that's a great question. So Wondergraph wasn't open source till like March or April. I forget, or I think around May. So from the time then, it was closed source, which makes it a lot harder. And so what we did was at the very beginning, we wrote, Jens mostly, he wrote opinionated blog posts on how these technologies should work, controversial contrarian views on like exposing GraphQL, or like just very like, like 50-50 technical stuff. And it's like, you're either on this side or that side.
Yeah.
And so the first thing that we did is, there wasn't a lot of people trying it out at first. And so what we did with the marketing strategy is we realized a lot of people read the blogs, and the blogs are very technical and well written, but they just need to be published more places, places with a higher domain rating. So we cross-posted the blogs on different places like Medium, Dev2, and I actually have a whole blog post that talks about like how we did all this, so I can share it with you later. But we posted it and cross-posted it everywhere, and we made sure all the traffic links back to our website. And then on our website, we had, the Discord where we created the community. And so people were able to come into the community and ask questions like, okay, like, hey, I'm having an issue with this, I'm having an issue with that. And the blog posts are what brought us the most important people. It brought us people, and it brought us our first customer. They read it and they were like, I agree with your contrarian view. I'd like to try out Wondergraph. And so that view that we had, or our mission, was probably the most important thing for building the community and getting people to try the product. And so you can say your product does this, this, and this, and this, but if you have a mission behind it, it's like, the world is like this, and we want the world to be like Lego pieces. You just plug in APIs and you're done, instead of having to integrate everything. A lot of people can resonate with the mission, and then they can be like, okay, like I like that, I resonate with that, let me try it out. And so that was probably the most important thing, was writing these blog posts and publishing them across different places, and then getting people into the Discord, and then helping them out with any questions or anything they did when they were using Wondergraph.
Awesome. All right. And, like I mentioned earlier, because we had some time for a little chat before, everything started working. I really love the community on Discord. I think it's amazing that, you got people to talk to each other. And I think the fact that they came from this blog post where they realized they share your vision, it's a great strategy. So is it your strategy for the next, I don't know, couple of months at least, I don't know, a year?
Yeah, so probably forever. So the community to us is the most important, because without them, we wouldn't have been able to move where Wondergraph is now. So Wondergraph is open source, and it has over 25 contributors. So these are people that saw the product, they liked it, they joined the community, and they actually went and contributed it to us. And the important thing about when you create an open source community is creating what I call swimming lanes. So there's all different types of people out there. There's introverts, extroverts, there's developers, people that like to write, people that like to create content. And so we provide the community swimming lanes. So if you like to contribute in code, you can contribute to Wondergraph, and you can, actually add features, you can create pull requests, update the documentation. Maybe you're more of a supporter and you just kind of want to follow us along and you like what we're doing. We also have a lane for that. You can come out, upload us on Product Hunt. You can come support us in the community. You can actually be like an ambassador. If you like creating content, we also have a program for that. So right now we're releasing our content creator program. So if you write a blog post about Wondergraph and it gets accepted by one of our writers and we publish it, you can get paid up to $500 per article. And so that's another swimming lane we have, as well as for like editing and creating video content. A lot of our early success came from these people from the open source community that were supporters, but they had skills in like creating videos. So Jack Harrington, he's a huge influencer for the tech community. He created a video for us completely free, just because he liked the community and he liked what Wondergraph was doing. And that brought us so much traction and traffic that it was crazy. So the most important thing with us is the community, because without the community, we wouldn't have anything. We wouldn't have these contributors. We wouldn't have these videos. We wouldn't have marketing content. And the most important is we wouldn't have users.
Right. Absolutely. But yeah, and coming back to the community, again, great job. But you are marketing, you're growing Dev2, you're selling to developers. Not the easiest crowd to sell to, not the easiest people to start talking to or make talk, right? So how do you do that? And how do you make sure that it's live, that it's growing, that people are actually talking to you and talking to each other?
So that's a great question. And like you said, selling to developers is probably the hardest persona to sell to. So developers are naturally like weary of ads. And so if you post something and it comes off as an ad, they dismiss you right away. And developers are very hands-on. So you have to provide them a way that they can quickly try out your product and see if they like it and see if it solves their problem for them. So with that, like your landing page has to be ready, your examples have to be ready, your get started has to be ready, and you have to just let them try without selling. So you don't want to sell them anything. Just let them try. And so that's the most important thing when it comes to creating content is you create content that educates, that doesn't sell. Because if your product's good, it won't sell itself, but if you assist it with some marketing and a little bit of sales later on, it will. Because any product can be amazing, but it still needs marketing and sales. But with this one, it's kind of like a push and pull game. So you allow the developers to educate themselves on Wondergraph and the problem it solves with good content. And good content takes time and it takes, effort. And so with that, then you just educate them, you show them cool videos and things like that. And you're never pushy, you never sell. You just say like, this is how you can try it out. These are the things you can abstract away. Let me know, and you leave it. And so it's not really selling. When you want to work with developers, it's educating, and educating is the
Right.
most important. And so like with that comes our KPIs, which I was actually working on today. So
Oh, amazing.
our most important KPIs when it comes to like open source are weekly SDK downloads. So how many people are weekly trying it out? Like social buzz, how many people are tweeting, how many people are joining in the Discord, how many people are, talking about it. And then the total number of weekly and monthly projects, which is like how many people are actually using Wondergraph today. So those are our most important SDKs, and they're growing very nicely, which is nice. But the way we're doing it is by educating. We're creating content. We just have 2 new blog posts we're ready to release that the community member built for us, is like how to build your e-commerce app in a weekend for using Wondergraph and Strapi, like a different technology. So that's how you like sell to developers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. No, that's I think that's an awesome strategy. Because yeah, like you said, developers are very hard to convince to buy something, right? So you
Mhm.
never really sell to them. So you just give them something to play with, and then they decide if that's worth their time. But yeah, it's also an interesting way to sell, because I think when you started growing the project, you started building it in public right away, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then from that you grew into an open source project. So the sense of community and the sense of contribution was really, really high, I think, from the beginning. Uh, but and again, like we discussed earlier, it's kind of difficult to make people pay for an open source project,
Mhm.
right? Because it's maybe a bit more difficult to introduce value. So how did you get your first paying customers? How did you, work about the business model?
Yeah. So great question. We're actually working, that's a current work in progress, but the way we do it now is we are profitable. So we have a nice MRR, and it comes from a select enterprise customers that we have. They're on our landing page, you can see. And one of the best features of Wondergraph, and this came to us by accident from the blog post, is since Wondergraph is open source, it means you can run it anywhere. And that's such a hot topic for big fintech companies and companies that need to keep their technology in-house on their own servers. And so what Wondergraph does is you can use all the benefits of Wondergraph open source, but you run it yourself on your architecture. And so what we offer are support contracts. We have different tiers, from bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. And you get support as well as like a dedicated Slack channel. You can get added features or whatever for a monthly subscription fee of dedicated support. And so that's what our current customers do now. They host Wondergraph themselves, and we provide them support with hosting it, making sure that it's running. If any errors go down, we quickly go and we fix them. We have quick turnaround time. And so that's where we are right now. But the main issue with that is it's not sustainable. So you can bring on as many customers as you want, but it requires more power. So we have to have an account executive for them. We have to have engineers on call for them. And it is something we still want to keep. But right now, what Wondergraph is doing is we have the Wondergraph open source here that can be hosted anywhere. Now we're doing Wondergraph Cloud. So with our SaaS offering for $50 a month per user, you can host your WonderGraph in the cloud. So you can build out the backend of your dreams, is what I like to say, or build your SaaS in a weekend and quickly deploy it to a Wonder node, and it's up in the cloud ready to go. You connect your clients and you built your whole SaaS application in a weekend. And so that's going to be our second, I guess, revenue stream, is people coming in, trying it out, paying the monthly fee and doing it from there. And then from that, you can also hit the target audience of enterprise customers that can or use a cloud service. So a lot, I mean, like 90% of companies use AWS. That's a cloud service. And so now we can also offer a cloud service that allows you to quickly and easily eliminate your infrastructure and just focus on shipping code and deploying it, and it's always up and running. And so that's the second one. And then the third one where we want to go is just kind of hone in on the enterprise customers and help them out with our cloud offering.
Okay. Oh, that's a very nice growth strategy. I really love it. And I know that you just recently, and everyone who's watching, there is a link to WonderGraph product hunt page. So please go and show some love. But yeah, what is that about? Like, why did you decide to launch on product hunt? Why now? And also, there are many like videos, posts, how to go to product hunt. Is it actually so time consuming and resource consuming, or was it a bit easier for you? How did you approach it?
So product hunt is hard. Like it's like a marathon, which is tricky. And it was, we decided to do it because WonderGraph open source, we launched it maybe in like March or April, but we never launched on product hunt. And someone suggested like, you guys should launch on product hunt. And we were like, like, let me look at it. Why not? And so we took a look at product hunt and we were like, you know what, this is something we want to do. And for us, it was more of a test. Like, let's put some effort into it and let's see what we get out of it. And if it's something useful, we just created another funnel. And I'll get more into like how it ended up at the end. But so far, what we did is we had to take 3 weeks to prepare, and we had to create new documents. We had to create new diagrams. We had to work with the design agency that we work with now to create documents, to make our UI on our landing page look nicer, to make it easy to sign up. And then we had to use the community. So for the first, like, we had to go and we had to ask them like, hey guys, like, we're going live, like, we have 500 people in here, like, we want to try to get to top 10 at least, like, you guys can help us out. And what's funny is our goal was 150 upvotes and 20 comments, and we ended up completely obliterating that goal. So we had like 680 upvotes, we were number 5 product of the day, and we had, I think, over 100 comments. And the amount of work that went into it was a lot. But the amount of return that we got on it was also just as good. So the work that went in was, I had to wake up, since it's Pacific time, it's at 3 a.m. So, or 12:01 Pacific time. So at 3 a.m. I was up and I had to monitor for 24 hours until the next day till 3 a.m. And it's very tricky because you have people across all different time zones, same thing with our community. And so you have to make sure you keep the momentum going by sending out like your army during the whole day. So we had to hit Europe, we had to hit people that were in China, anyone that knows what WonderGraph was, to come and support us. And we didn't ask them to upvote us. It's against actually the rules on product, but just to come support us. And a lot of people, when they come support you, will write comments. And so we also had our current customers write comments. We also had, all the people that contributed to open source, we created a maker's card. So we actually were celebrating them because they got WonderGraph to this point. And so it brought in a sense of community. And just the response we got from everybody was amazing. Like, we couldn't believe it. Like, over 670 upvotes, and then to get the number 5 product of the day. And this is crazy. We also launched on the same day that Next.js 13 launched, which is this amazing new framework. And they had a whole conference, and we still beat them, which was amazing. And so the product hunt, I recommend it for everyone. But the only time is like when you have to put in the work for it. And if you put in for the work for it, what we got out of it was we had like 40 new signups for our cloud offering. We had, I think, 30 new people join into our Discord. We got 2 venture capital firms reach out to us to meet us and to talk to us for our next series. And we had just another funnel. So we still have traffic coming from product, and there's people still upvoting. And so now if we did it once, we can do it again. And I know how to do it again. Maybe we won't get top 5 again. Who knows? I think we might actually blow it up and get the first with the cloud offering. But it takes a lot of work, but you get a lot out of it. So I totally recommend Product Hunt.
Awesome. And what would be your best recommendation? What does a founder absolutely has to do if they want to go to Product Hunt?
So they have to build the resources behind it. So I'm actually writing a blog post on this, which you can share later on, but you have to have an army, and your army is your supporters. You have to use your customers, you have to use your friends and family, you have to use anyone that knows what you've been working on. So the army is probably the most important. And then tied with that is the diagrams and the presentation. People are on Product Hunt all the time and they quickly see something. So your tagline has to be something good, the open source developer platform. And so you have to make sure that you run by the copy as well as all the images that you created, and they have to be professionally designed and ready to go. And then third is influencers. So when you're building out a startup, especially in DevTools, there's developer advocates, and you can make friends with them. And if you're good with them and you create a nice relationship with them, they can always help you out, a simple tweet or something like that. And so I am connected with the mayor of Miami in Miami. And so like, he's a very big tech guy. And like, I've spoken with him at like conferences and things like that. And I reached out to him and I texted him. I was like, hey, we're live on Product Hunt. Do you mind supporting us on Twitter? And he retweeted a tweet of ours, and that drove a huge influx of upvotes. So it's also who you know, and make sure that you utilize that influencer army. Don't be like unless you really know them, like, hey, can you upvote or support us? But like, just be like, hey, like we're live on Product Hunt. Here's a link if you want to support us. And you'd be surprised. People will come in and they'll really help you. And the developer community, it's all about helping people that are not, like trying to scam and shove their product down your throat, but rather educating and helping out. So the community, like once again, most important people for our product, they came in very handy.
Awesome. Okay, congrats. And I went there and I was actually surprised that you replied. I was like, okay, don't you just throw it in there and just leave it? But yeah, thanks for telling that. Anyway, it's everything sounds like it's been dream come true, and I really want to keep it real again for other founders. So what was the biggest challenge that you've had?
So, I mean, it's actually funny. Today we were talking about it. We have a founder like chat 30 minutes every morning. And Elon Musk said a quote, like building a startup is like staring into the abyss and eating glass. And it totally represents the fact that it is, because every single day there's a new challenge and you're just getting punched in the face and you have to keep smiling and go. And so, I mean, there's so many. So if I had to think, like the biggest one would, raising was very difficult. Like it looks like we did it fast on paper, but the amount of effort that went into it, that was difficult. We don't really concern ourselves with competitors or what they're doing. So there isn't like a competitor release something that'll kill us. We don't have a product like that. Like, how Google always releases something at their summit and it kills like 50 startups. So that's not with us. But like, I think the biggest issue is creating and keeping that growth steady. So you want to keep an upwards trend and you want people to keep downloading Wondergraph. And so the biggest challenge is, how can I do that? And how can I do it faster? And you don't want to growth hack. You want to be genuine. And being genuine takes time. So biggest and hardest things are creating good content, because sometimes you spend 10, 15 hours a week on a piece of content, and you send it out and nobody cares about it. And so that's probably one of the biggest challenge. And then the second biggest challenge is team. So we have a team of 11 and they're amazing, including all the founders. They're all awesome, but it's just not enough. Like our backlog is filling up, and at a startup, you have a burning fires everywhere. And so you have to choose which fires to turn out or extinguish. So that's probably like the biggest one, is like, okay, should we focus on a landing page and increase conversion, or should we just, focus on alpha? And speaking of alpha, we just launched a Wondergraph Cloud Alpha today. And so that's another big thing. But that one's like, thank you. That one's more like just quiet though. It's just for the alpha users to test out. But yeah, there's so many different problems. And like, if you read about them, like all these problems will just come to you, and you just have to like knock some out of the way, focus on the most important stuff. And prioritization is probably the most important one, is like learn how to prioritize the fires to take out.
Okay. All right. Thank you for sharing that. And, because the trend on LinkedIn, especially, is to share all your wins and never share your losses. So I think it's really important to just talk honestly about the downsides of being a founder. And it's great that you mentioned that, now there are 11 people in Wondergraph. So when did you guys decide to hire more people? Was it after you raised a round, or when was it?
Yeah, so after we raised the round, that was probably the most important thing. So the four co-founders, we were doing this as a part-time, and not really part-time because it was funny. Like we would put in 40 hours at work and 40 hours on this.
Oh,
And so it was grueling, but it got to the point where if we wanted to expand, we needed to add more people. And so if you think that fundraising is hard, hiring is even harder. And so you don't have a dedicated HR team. We worked with a couple recruiters that were just awful. They lied on resumes and we would interview them. And so we created a rule. Our first 10 employees, since they're founding engineers, they can't be from a recruiter. We don't want to work with any recruiter. We have to do it ourselves. And so we decided right after we raised the funds that the most important thing is we need to hire engineers. We need to hire senior, junior engineers. And the way we did it was our first two engineers came out of Jens, who was in the tech space for 15 years now. He knew these guys, and so you reach out to your personal connections first, and you see who you can bring on board. And so that's what we did. I reached out to everybody. We did interviews and things like that. But it was after we got the funding we realized that we have to hire people if we want to go where we want to go.
Okay. And well, what helped you, distinguish, what people are your people? And I remember you said earlier that, if you cannot work with a person for one day, you probably shouldn't work with them at all. So this may be a bit strange, because these people may have amazing skills, but if it doesn't click, probably it's never going to. So what helped you find your people?
So that's a great question. And like you said, if you don't click with them, you can't work with them. And so that was our biggest thing was a culture. Oh, that's my dog.
That's okay.
Cheeky, relax. Let me grab her one sec.
Okay.
She gets, yeah, that's my dog.
Oh, hello.
But so when it came to hiring, the culture fit was probably the most important. And we did a very quick interview process. We meet with you, one person, just one of us, is a coffee chat. We see how you are culturally. We give a thumbs up, thumbs down. Thumbs up means you get the technical project. And when we gave them a technical project, you were able to see very easily like what they are able to bring to the table. And so the technical project was open-ended. It allows you to either contribute to Wondergraph, build something with Wondergraph, create a piece of content with Wondergraph, just something, because when you're joining us as a founding engineer, you also have to be kind of an entrepreneur. Like you don't know what we're all doing yet, like this is our first venture. And so you have to also come with ideas. And so that was the second thing. And then based on the project, we would do a final one where you meet all the other founders. And so that's how we were able to see if it was a thumbs up, thumbs down. And during this process, none of us said any feedback till the very end. I just give a thumbs up, thumbs down. I didn't say like, oh, like he's super cool, he's super smart, nothing. So that way at the end, when we talked about it, we could see how we all thought without being biased. And so that worked really well for us. And we were able to, we had bad interviews, but we also had good interviews. And we had people that we wish we could hire, but they just weren't a cultural fit. But hiring is a lot of work. Like it's very stressful too, because like where to post and things like that. And so a tip I would give is Hacker News puts a who's hiring at the first of every month. And whatever tool you're using, like because we use Golang, you can also post in the Reddit chats, or the Reddit communities that you're hiring from there. And so that's where we got some good engineers and things like that. So that was our hiring process and it worked, but it's also just an ongoing process that we tweak every day.
Great. Okay. Thanks for sharing that. Okay. And what would be your best tip to those teams or even solo founders, that want to grow their dev tool, where to go, what to do first?
Yeah. So for solo founders, the advice is find a co-founder. Like your life will be so much easier if you can find a co-founder, and like it's so much easier when you're going through stuff to have somebody that's also going through, so you guys can talk about it and you guys can laugh about it. And so being a solo founder is like, I take my hat off, it's very impressive. But if you can find a co-founder, but the best advice I can give is like I said, like building a startup is like going to war. And you have to make sure that the guys that you're working with, that you trust and you really love them and you like working with them. And like, you're going to disagree, but it's okay that if you guys disagree in a respectable fashion and you make sure that everyone's heard. So the most important thing anywhere is team, because when VCs are investing into you, they're not really investing into your company. They're not really investing into the product. They know the product's small. They know that, okay, you're getting this amount of downloads, but they know that you can take this product to something else. And so if you build a good team around yourself, as well as the people that you're working with, and you love working with them and going to work, I think then there's nothing that can stop you guys, because even if something stops, you guys still have like a super cool experience that you have. So if you're a solo founder, find a co-founder. And if you're in a startup or whatever, just make sure that your team is right behind you and that you guys can support and trust each other. So team is definitely the most important.
No, perfect. I agree with you 100%. And just one more question, because you mentioned, we have arguments, but we solve them. So we had a podcast with an investor, and he said, "Hey, I don't really ask like who you are, what your education is. I ask people." What would they do if they had an argument, if they didn't agree on like the amount of investment, or like where the investment goes and all that? So how they solved an argument. So what were the tough or maybe strange or maybe unusual questions that you were asked when you were raising?
There's a lot of different questions you make. So it also depends on the investor. So if the investor doesn't really have a technical knowledge, they would ask some bizarre and weird questions. So like somebody was like, how do you compare to MuleSoft, which is like this huge API giant that's completely different from us. So that was kind of weird. But some of the tough questions that we were asked is why, why do you think that you guys can do this? And that requires some internal reflection. And it's like, well, we believe we can do this because Jens, who built the product, has been working in this space for 15 years. The community is seeing the problem that we're solving and they're relating to it. And so that was a tough question, was like, why do you think you can do this? And then it required the reflection, but we were able to answer it well. And then another one was like the roadmap. So the roadmap in a startup is changing all the time. So some people have like a 5-year plan. You can't have that in a startup. So we have 6 months plans. And then we have one that's at the year, but like a year is also too long. So 6 months, and so 3 months and 6 months are the sweet spot for having that plan. So when they asked us about the product roadmap plan for a year or 5 years from now, we were like, well, we can't think that far. We still need to get post market fit. And the way we do that is by having 3 to 6 month plans. And so those were probably the two toughest questions that we had. Also, they would ask like based on experience questions and things like that. But those are just to kind of like poke at you and see how you react. But those are fine as well.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks for sharing. And I absolutely loved how you're talking about it, because it's kind of that no, not too many expectations, not too many dreams around it, right? Very realistic, kind of pretty honest of what's going on. So thank you for that as well. And yeah, I guess the last question, and tell me if I'm putting you on the spot there. Who do you think should be the next guest? Maybe somebody who's also building a dev tool or has a dev tool that you'd love to hear about.
Yeah, so we've made some awesome friends in the community so far, and it really depends. So I just tried out this new tool today. Let me figure it out. But I was trying it out for something. It's called Interval. And the CEO got on a call with me and he helped me out right away. So either the CEO of Interval or David from Stately. So David is creating a visualizer for state machines. And eventually we can see some overlap with WonderGraph. So we're also going to be using state machines, and Stately will be able to sit on top and provide the visualizer. So all from a UI, you can create the logic and share it. So David from Stately would be an awesome guest as well, because he's also based out of Florida. He was a software engineer for 4 years at Microsoft before he went on to start his own venture. And he's just an all-around great person. He's super awesome. And then any of the guys at Daily Dev, so Ida and Nimrod, they're two great founders and they're really building something awesome. They actually launched today on Product Hunt. So if you guys can support them as well. But
Sure.
I'd probably go with David. Yeah, David has some awesome stuff to say. So he would be a great guest on here.
Thank you. All right. It's not always that we get some recommendations, but thanks for that. Anyway, it's been great having you here. Thank you for all your answers. I think whoever was listening learned a lot. And yeah, don't forget to go to Product Hunt. There is a link right below the podcast link. So thank you, Stefan, and I hope to have you maybe in a year when you're huge, guys.
Hope so. I hope so. Yeah, I'd love to come back. And if you guys need any help, I'll send you over the pitch deck once Legal checks it out.
Please.
And if you need any other resources, let me know. But really like what you guys are doing over at MarsX.
Oh, thank you. All right. Well, take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye.